What happens when you win one of the most iconic races in all of NASCAR? Soak it all in. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Indianapolis Motor Speedway, one of the most iconic tracks in all of America. Aside from Daytona International Speedway, of course, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is the home of all forms of racing. Of course, iconic for the Indianapolis 500, the greatest spectacle in racing. But in 1994, NASCAR came to Indianapolis for the first time ever, starting a tradition of running the Brickyard 400. A tradition that ran from 1994 all the way to 2020. Then for 3 years, we did the road course race. But last year, we brought back the traditional Brickyard 400. And yesterday, in year 2 of its return to the oval portion, we saw a very strategic race of guys with differing strategies all throughout the day. And one driver who's been on the cut line for the last couple of weeks gets his first crown jewel win and giving him a boost into the postseason. Let's get into all that happened yesterday at Indy. Number 1, Bubba kisses the bricks. Bubba Wallace! Holy moly! Bubba Wallace saved a lot of fuel, as much fuel as he had left, to win yesterday's Brickyard 400 presented by PPG at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, surviving 2 overtime restarts, mind you, to hold off Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, his car owner, Ryan Preece, and Brad Keselowski for the victory. Bubba Wallace now is a Brickyard 400 winner. What an incredible job he and his number 23 team did yesterday to win that race. Qualified on the outside of the far row next to Chase Briscoe, and of course you would expect Bubba. He's like, I'm disappointed, I wanted the pole. But yesterday, man, did he have a rocket ship with that Chumpa Casino Toyota. That thing was able to stay in the top 5, top 10 pretty much the entire race. Never lost track position, never got upset on the radio when things weren't going his way. He pretty much let the race go as it was and pretty much held his position for where he was for a lot of the race. He was able to score stage points in both stages yesterday, and that 23 car with the speed that it had was able to maintain pace with some of the other guys that were on differing strategies or being the same realm as the other guys that he was running around for the majority of the race, like his teammate Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and even Joey Logano and CIndric for times during the race. But Bubba yesterday was in prime position towards the end of the race to walk off with no issues whatsoever. When the leader, Joey Logano, in front of him with about 20 plus laps to go, had a tire issue that took Logano out of the lead, which would have been his for the rest of the way if there would be nothing else that had happened. Bubba was able to take the lead when Logano has tire problems, and it looked like he was going to be on cruise control all the way home because of the gap that he had, because he pitted earlier than most of the other guys he was running around when we started that final stage yesterday. But as crew chief did tell him, try to save a little bit of fuel if you possibly can. We may have pitted early, but we could be very close to making it on fuel the rest of the way, especially if there is a potential of overtime. Then with 6 laps to go, a brief rain cell appeared in the area and kind of damping turns 1 and 2, bringing out a caution flag and eventual red flag so we could dry that section of the track and then get back going. Thankfully, it was not a long rain delay, especially if the whole track was covered. We would not have been able to get that race back going because it takes a long time to dry that track. But thankfully, that section of 1 and 2, we were able to get that done lickety split, and the field got back rolling, and Bubba had to survive 2 overtime restarts against one of the best drivers in NASCAR, and Kyle Larson. Now, the first overtime restart, Bubba kind of lost a little bit of his momentum through 1 and 2, and Larson was able to get a little bit of a fender out in front, but when Larson couldn't capitalize and had to stay to the top side, which going to turn 2 is a disadvantage here, Bubba was able to carry the momentum through 2, past the 5 car, and it looked like he was going to be on his way to cruise control all the way home. But right behind him, Zane Smith got turned from behind by Christopher Bell, sending him into the outside wall and collecting Bubba's teammate Tyler Reddick as well as a few others, setting up another restart for overtime. And Bubba's crew chief told him, buddy, save, because we could be very close here. We could potentially run out of gas here. And apparently, if we had gotten another lap under yellow while trying to set the field up and we didn't clean up enough debris from that wreck on the backstretch, there was a good chance that the 23 car was going to be coming to pit road and having to put in all the fuel and sacrificing a chance of winning the race. When we got that final restart in overtime going, Bubba was able to stay alongside the 5 car Kyle Larson, but then carried the momentum into turn 1 and cleared the 5 car and had to survive those final 2 laps in overtime to hold off one of the best in NASCAR, and Bubba Wallace came home on top, winner of the Brickyard 400. I'm amazed how much fuel was still left in that car when the checker flag flew. I thought for sure he's going to run out of gas at some point, because listening to the radio communication and based on their calculations, there was no way he could have survived that second overtime and made it all the way home to the victory lane in first place. There was no way, I don't think, he was going to be able to make it home. But he did. And he had plenty of fuel for one of the best burnouts I've seen in quite some time. I mean, he had to soak in every single moment, because it's been a long time since Bubba Wallace actually won a Cup Series race. It was 3 years ago at Kansas in the fall race of the playoffs. And Bubba was not a playoff driver at the time because he missed the playoffs. But he was driving the 45 car at that time because they were in the Owners' Championship. And unfortunately, after Kurt Busch injured himself in that Pocono crash in qualifying, which ultimately ended his career, Bubba was tapped to drive the 45 for the rest of the playoffs to help them in the Owners' Championship. Of course, we all know what happened with him in Las Vegas with Kyle Larson at the time, but Bubba won that playoff race in Kansas as a non-playoff driver and shuts the crowd, basically. And of course, we all know his first NASCAR Cup Series win came with the number 23 car in the first year of 2311 racing at Talladega Superspeedway, where the race was eventually cut short due to rain, but Bubba soaked in every moment because it was his first Cup Series win. Yesterday's performance was just outstanding by him because of how much fuel they were able to save and how fast that car was. This wasn't a fluke win. He got up there based off a track position from where he was running. He was up front all race long. And for a guy the last couple of weeks that has been on the cutoff line, trying to stay above the playoff grid and not having to worry about anybody behind him, whether or not they were going to be able to win a race and knock Bubba out, because he was the last guy in above. And after the impressive 7th place that they had last week at Dover, they carried that momentum into that race yesterday, and he came out on top like a champ. And yesterday you saw how he was in his post-race interview after climbing out of the car. You know, he was soaking in every single moment because he realized he just won a crown jewel race. And he celebrated with his wife, his beautiful son, and, you know, he got to hold him up high like he was Simba from The Lion King, which is a very cool moment, a nice family bonding experience, and soaking in every moment, because sometimes you don't know if you're going to win another Cup race in NASCAR. And Bubba puts a lot of pressure on himself, but I feel like after he had his son, you know, last year, I felt like, you know, he's just like, let everything go as it is, and let's see, you know, if things turn out good, they'll be good, and if not, so be it. But yesterday was an impressive day for Bubba Wallace, and this was the best performance I've seen from this team since that Homestead race earlier this year, where they were in the top 5, top 10 all day long, had no problems, and finished in the top 5 in that race. And I mentioned, up until Dover, the last couple races have been kind of a little bit of a rocky road for this team. And let's also not forget that this 2311 racing team is dealing with the lawsuit with NASCAR. And no, I'm not going too much in the details because I don't really understand this whole back and forth with these guys. Even though I've been keeping up the tabs, I'm not a major when it comes to law, so I wouldn't know what was really going on. But unfortunately, because of this lawsuit, 2311 Racing, they've lost all their charters for the rest of the season. But thankfully, NASCAR, you know, updated the rule book that says any team that's been running full season this year, and even that has been stripped of their charters, can still have guaranteed access to every single race going forward for the rest of the season. So 2311 Racing will be trying to find a charter at some point next year if they possibly can for all 3 of their entries. But yesterday, they don't have to worry about all that stuff because they got to see their guy, Bubba Wallace, who was the first driver of 2311 Racing that Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan took a chance on to come over, start a race team, and start a program. And they got their first win in their first year. They got wins the following year with Bubba and Tyler Reddick. And now Bubba Wallace has given 2311 Racing their first win of the season, and he's going to the playoffs. So he doesn't have to worry about the wild cards coming up like Watkins Glen and Daytona. He could just go have fun until these playoffs get started at Darlington. So a big congratulations to Bubba Wallace and the 23 team yesterday on their win at Indianapolis. Very, very impressive. Number 2, Larson can't go back-to-back. Kyle Larson was trying yesterday to win back-to-back Brickyard 400s. Of course, you all remember last year he won that race, albeit maybe a little controversial fashion because he moved up a lane because Brad Keselowski, the leader, pitted coming to green because he was out of gas. Larson was able to take the lead briefly from Ryan Blaney and held it even with another restart and won the Brickyard 400. He was trying to repeat yesterday and kind of make up for the failed double this year because he attempted the Indianapolis 500 and the Coke 600 on the same day. He ran both races on the same day. He just didn't complete all the miles in both races. He wrecked out early in the Indy 500, then he flew back to Charlotte, and he had an incident early on, was trying to recover from that, and got involved in another wreck. It was just a disappointing Indy double day for Kyle Larson and Memorial Day weekend this year. Yesterday, he almost had a chance to make up for that, and for a team that had been in kind of a summer slump until last week's fourth place finish at Dover, Kyle Larson had been, really needing a lot of luck and need to get a little jolt of momentum back in the team, and yesterday they did a really good job. They had a very fast car, they ran well all day long, had no problems on pit road, and they were trying everything they could in those last two overtime restarts to get by Bubba Wallace. That first overtime restart, he hung tight with him through turn one. He had a little fender ahead of him, but being the guy on the outside going to turn two, you are at a total disadvantage. And the hope for Kyle Larson was, if I can't get by Bubba in the restart, the hope is that he runs out of gas and I'm the one coming home first place and not him. But that was not the case, unfortunately, as Larson couldn't get by Bubba, and Bubba, of course, had enough fuel somehow to make it home in first place ahead of Kyle Larson. But 2 weeks in a row of top 5 finishes for Larson and the 5 team, getting the momentum back. And I feel like ever since that disappointing Indy Coke 600 double failure earlier this year where he wrecked in both races, it's been like the 5 team has been on a downslide since. But again, the top 5 last weekend and the runner-up yesterday, starting to get some momentum back. They get a win, their confidence is back sky high. And I feel like they're going to get another win before the season's also done. And hopefully, maybe another win before these playoffs begin. You want as much momentum as you possibly can entering this playoffs, because if you have no momentum, you're going to be on edge for those first 3 races of the playoffs, and you could potentially find yourself on the outside after the night race at Bristol. But yesterday, Larson, despite coming up short, another valiant effort and another solid performance. Number 3, solid day for 2 Toyota guys. Hamlin coming home with a top 5, and Gibbs $1 million richer. Denny Hamlin, of course, he is the happy car owner for Bubba Wallace because Bubba Wallace won the Brickyard 400 yesterday. But Denny Hamlin deserves a lot of praise too. Of course, this is a race that Hamlin has still not yet won and will have to wait until next year. But yesterday, the performance that he put together was remarkable. If you don't know what I'm talking about, on Saturday, Denny Hamlin was qualifying his car, then off of turn 2, got loose, smacked the outside wall, and then the car rolled right into the inside safer barrier wall so hard, made me clench my teeth. But they had to go to a backup car. The crew put in hours and hours of work to get their car ready for the Brickyard 400. When the green flag dropped, they gained a couple spots, but were kind of stuck where they were at. And then we got a couple cautions and the guys flipping their strategies. Hamlin was able to slowly pick his way through the field, especially with some adjustments. He got himself inside the top 10 by the end of the second stage, and then we get into the final stage. He starts to become a top 5, 6, 7 car. And then, of course, at the end of the race, he was able to propel himself up to third in the last lap when William Byron, who was still in the middle of this regular season championship battle with his other 2 teammates, Elliott and Larson, and not to mention Hamlin as well as a part of the mix, he ran out of gas going down the backstretch into turn number 3. Hamlin got by him, and he ended up with a 3rd place result. So for a guy who takes a backup car starting shotgun in the field, taking all the way up to finish a podium spot in 3rd place, while his driver is winning one of the most coveted NASCAR races in the schedule, I don't think you could be too disappointed with, if you're Denny Hamlin yesterday, being able to charge from the rear, finishing on the top 3, seeing your guy win the race. That's a really good day for him. And then Ty Gibbs, congratulations, he is your first ever in-season challenge champ. Ty Gibbs went head-to-head with Ty Dillon, the other Ty in the NASCAR Cup Series, for the $1 million prize that was at stake with this in-season challenge. Ever since NASCAR came up with this in-season challenge rule that was basically a carbon copy of what the NBA is currently doing, of letting these teams play in the middle of the season, of the regular season, ballot out for a big prize. The prize this year being a trophy, but also $1 million. It came down to 2 ties, Ty Gibbs and Ty Dillon. Nobody expected Ty Dillon to make it all the way this far, but he did because he prevailed against some of the big dogs of our sport. Ty Gibbs, was a wild card, honestly, I feel like, of the top teams to make it all the way this far, but he did as well. And Gibbs yesterday, he didn't have the car to finish well in the race, and I feel like that they struggled after they lost some track position and got off a different strategy. But he was able to capitalize when Ty Dillon had a problem at the start of the second stage on a restart where there was a stack up in the middle of the pack, and Ty Dillon unfortunately ran to the back of somebody, hurting the front of his car, and pretty much taking him out of contention from battling Gibbs for the $1 million. At the end of the day, Gibbs, 21st place finish, not a great result for him, but you cannot take away the fact that he is the first ever in-season challenge winner, and he got to take $1 million home with him. Now, what will he do with that prize money? I think he has some ideas. I feel like majority of it, though, is going to go to Joe Gibbs Racing because they're the principal owner and everything. But Ty Gibbs, he's $1 million richer, and that's something they can't take away from him. So, solid day for Denny Hamlin as a car owner and a driver, with his driver winning and him getting a third. Ty Gibbs, $1 million richer. Number 4, tire failures, taking out 2 Penske guys. Yesterday, 2 Penske drivers, Austin CIndric and Joey Logano, had cars that were honestly quite capable, if not winning the race, perhaps finishing inside the top 5. Those 2 had really good speed in their race cars. They were able to keep up with track position for a lot of the race. Austin CIndric found himself the leader at the start of the second stage when he took a differing strategy, and it looked like he was going to be in prime position to run up front for the final stage. He led a lot of those laps, was able to stretch the gap compared to some other guys that were running right behind him. But midway through that second stage, on the front straightaway, a tire blew out, taking CIndric out of the lead and basically out of contention for the race win. And this is a team, ever since their win at Talladega, that just has had no luck whatsoever. Just absolutely gutting for Austin CIndric yesterday. Even though he was able to recover and finish inside the top 15, seeing him lead that race and having that tire failure while leading, that's an absolute gut punch, man. That just really, really sucks for him. Then we get to Joey Logano, of course, the defending Cup Series champion, still trying to get a little bit of momentum in this season despite the one win. They really haven't had a lot of luck and a lot of top 10s this season. They had some pretty good speed in their car yesterday, like their teammate CIndric did. Their other teammate, Ryan Blaney. Logano found himself possibly in prime position at the start of the final stage to win the Brickyard 400 for the first time ever. And after they made their green flag pit stops, Logano found himself in front of Bubba Wallace, like I mentioned, and it looked like Logano was going to be the guy having to battle Bubba for the win. But on the back straightaway, halfway through the final stage, Logano too, like his teammate, had a rear tire failure that took him out of contention. My mind was blown away. I'm like, what is going on with these Penske cars and tire failures? I mean, there was another Ford that had a problem with the tire failure in the race in Cole Custer, but 2 Penske guys that were up front leading in contention for a lot of the race yesterday, and having both those incidents take both of them out of contention, that's just absolutely disappointing to see. And Logano's race didn't get much better after that because he fell laps down, and when he made that pit stop for that cut tire, he stalled the car, leaving his pit box, losing more laps in the process, and pretty much taking him out of a chance for a solid day. And then he got caught up in that wreck in the first overtime where he got clipped by the wrecking Zane Smith going into turn number 3. So Logano's day went from bad to worse right after that and ultimately didn't finish the race. But 2 tire failures taking out 2 Penske cars yesterday definitely sucks for those guys. And number 5, strategic racing at the Brickyard. We all know that Indianapolis Motor Speedway is a track position racetrack, just like Pocono, and you really, really, really need to have good track position here and have things fall your way if you're going to be in contention for the win. We all know that it's tough to pass in Indianapolis, and the only times you can really do it is perhaps the first 2, maybe 3 laps of a restart. Then after that, you're literally going to have to hope that handling becomes a factor, there's some tire fall off, or you're able to jump a couple guys if you're pitting early, especially what we've seen with this next-gen car and pitting early versus pitting late. Well, yesterday, it was a very interesting race when it came to strategy regarding, what guys would pit early versus guys that would sacrifice that track position for the start of the second or whatever stage for some stage points yesterday. And a couple guys did that, like Bubba Wallace. He went for stage points, and he ultimately came out on top victorious, saving enough fuel for the win. But it was a very strategic race yesterday, and yes, it's still a challenge to pass in Indianapolis, but it always has been, honestly, ever since we came to this track in 1994. But was it a fairly entertaining race when it came to the strategic part? yes, the racing product was okay, but I feel like we could put on a better product for racing as far as being able to try to pass a guy, but it's not called passing in this sport. It's called racing. And the strategic part of it yesterday definitely made it very interesting for the most part. And I'm very thankful that that little cell that moved through, and despite bringing out the caution red flag, it didn't last that long. We were able to dry up and keep going. I mean, 2 weeks in a row, we've had Mother Nature kind of nearly impact the end of these races, but we thankfully finished both of them, albeit in multiple overtimes, but we got it done. And that will also bring an end to the TNT portion of the NASCAR Cup Series season. It was great to have TNT back in NASCAR after an 11-year hiatus. I felt like they did a really good job this year with Adam Alexander, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Steve Letarte and company on pit road, and the NASCAR Nation pre- and post-race crew with Shannon Spade, Jamie McMurray, and Parker Kligerman. We thank them for all that they've done for this year. But now it's back to NBC and USA Network that will take us home all the way to the checkers at Phoenix, where we were crowned a champion. Lee Diffie's back, Jeff Burton's back, Steve Letarte will be back with them on NBC, and all the NBC crew as well will be back starting next weekend. It's good to have them back on board, and we'll see them carry us all the way to Phoenix and find out who this year's champion is going to be. So with that, we're off to Corn Country in Iowa next weekend. The second annual Iowa Corn 350 next weekend at Iowa Speedway. The track has got a little bit more age in the turns after the brief repave that we had last year, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens to these guys when they go racing next weekend. And it will also start in the afternoon time. Last year it started a little bit later in the day and transitioned to the nighttime. Don't think we're going to have that happen this time. It'll be a mid-afternoon start for us, and we'll see how these guys fare on this worn-out surface as well as how the tires will hold up. So the big question is, can Ryan Blaney go back-to-back at this track like he won this inaugural race last year, or will somebody else get the opportunity to be victorious in the Corn Country? And I will say this to everybody out there going to that race this weekend: hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Wear sunscreen, wear sunscreen, wear sunscreen. And bring a rain jacket just in case it may rain out there, because you don't know, especially in the Midwest, those summer storms can be a real pain in the you-know-what. But I'm looking forward to see what happens next weekend at Iowa. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Bubba Wallace and 2311 Racing, winners of the Brickyard 400. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!